Welcome to From Mild to Wild and everything in between. I want to take a little bit of time today I've asked for volunteers on the program, and we've talked for several months now. I had a fellow call me by the name of George Aiken. He was gracious enough to send us, or bring to me, a couple tapes which are of an automotive nature. This one here gives the history of the Thunderbird, and this one here, the history of the Corvette. Now, if any of you people out there have got tapes that you'd like us to air, just make sure that they're of a non-copyrighted nature. Even though we're doing this on public access, you want to make sure that you don't break the law by showing a tape that has got a copyright on it. And these tapes here don't have it, so we're able to show these. So probably within the next few weeks, what we'll do is we'll do a little opening and a little closing, and we'll show you these tapes here. They're very nice. We watched them yesterday. Now also, we have tapes which we've been handing out to the schools. A year or 2 years ago, we gave a complete set of 15 tapes to my own Herkimer alma mater. These were that condensed version. What you're seeing now is Wade and myself, we're sitting here going through and trying to put every bit of information on this TV program so you can do this project. But we do have condensed versions. If you'd like to get a hold of these to give to your own school, they're available. You can just contact us right here. Now, at the end of each program, we show you a scroll with all the sponsors that have donated the parts for this project. Well, they go one step more. These people are very good, and I want to bring it to your attention that they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart because they believe in our project. I'm in a process, and right here I've got programs 1 through 4, of which I'm copying and I'm sending to my sponsors. We sent out a few on Saturday. We've got quite a few more over here. Half of them, I think we did about 22 tapes last week. We're sending these to the sponsors because what they're going to do is they're going to go down to their own local cable company and get them aired for the people, not just in my area, but all over. And I want to bring this to your attention because we are now in Herkimer, and you're being viewed by Time Warner Channel 10. Starting next week, I got the good news on Friday that we're going to be on in Utica on Heron Cable's Channel 3. You'll be able to watch this same program on Mondays and Thursdays at 3:30 in the afternoon. So you can see there's a lot of people out there getting involved in the program and doing whatever needs to be done to get this program out there. As I told you, we want you to have fun. We know that school and work is kind of a drag. If you've got something that can occupy your time, keep you out of trouble, and make you happy, and that's what we're trying to do, make you happy. That's why anybody out there that thinks that they have an idea or they want to give a little bit of their time to me, by all means, give me a call. I'm the first one on the scroll, but like I said, make sure that you patronize these people or at least take your hat off to them for doing or going over and above what they have to do to give us a hand here. Now what I want to do is move these off. When we first started, we actually started these programs, of which the tapes I just showed you. Herkimer County Community College started airing these programs back last February. They wanted to get an idea of what they consisted of before we actually went in there and started making TV programs. So the program has been airing, or segments of it, since February of last year, and they ran until June. Well, I had a fellow come in the other day, and you know, I'm the first one to say to get out that blank videotape because I want you to record this information. I'm not trying to sell it to you. It's free. This fella taped the program, and he's gone ahead and he brought me in the other day his block, his crank, and his pistons. And I want to show you this because the information I feel is pretty good, but you can see he done this on his own. He went to the machine shop and had the work done and told them what he wanted done, and he went ahead and bought the KB pistons Those were the ones that we used. You know, I don't want to do a commercial break, but he's got a copy of the tape. He's following it. Not identical. I mean, I'm sure he's got his own little things that he wants to do. But I want you to see this block and crankshaft here. This is probably a 74 to a 76, 400 cubic inch small block Chevy. Now, he's had the block hot tanked, new cam bearings put in it. It's been bored out 30 thousandths. He also had to go in and have the deck surfaces right here. They were a little bit uneven, so he had about 10 thousandths taken off the deck surfaces. This is something that we didn't talk about, but let me kind of flip that. This surface right here at the machine shop, he detected that it was a little irregular, so he was afraid that we'd have a sealing problem, or the fellow would have a sealing problem, so he took 10 thousandths off the deck here. That was something we hadn't talked about in previous programs, but you can see it, a good machine shop will pick that up. He also went over here, they cleaned off the crank, they checked it all up for cracks, and they turned down the throws 10 thousandths. In other words, you could turn these throws as much as 30 thousandths. You know, if you spun a bearing or had a little problem, they can be turned and be reused again. There's no problem with that. Now also, he's going to put these 400s normally came with a 5-inch, 5.5 connecting rod. He's ordered the pistons here where he can actually make it a long rod motor. This is going to end up with 5-7 rods, just like all your small blocks. He's going to turn this into a long rod motor, which will give him a better mid and top range power band. But there's them KB pistons. I was kind of impressed the other day. You sometimes wonder, are you making a difference, or are we just standing up here shooting a breeze? Well, things like that make me say, okay, it's worth what I'm doing. If I can help one person in 1,000, in 10,000, my time is worth it. I think I indicated to you before, we had gone up and had an anti-drug rally at the in Frankfort, New York. And I had 3 of the kids in the audience. We probably, for our first outing, we had roughly 200 people show up. And I had 3 kids because I have a problem with the new cars. I look out into a parking lot today, and they all look like they came out of a jelly bean factory. They all look the same, in other words. It's just that they're different colors. I'm from the 50s and 60s. Every car back then had its own unique design, chrome, stainless steel, what have you. They were all personalized, if you will. So I was sitting there giving my same old spiel, and I says the same thing to these kids. And I had 3 kids. They didn't raise their hand, but they spoke up and they said, when I get to college, I'm going to design a car for you that resembles the cars of the 50s and 60s. And I said, oh, gee, that would be great. You know, at least I know that the kid is paying attention to what I'm saying. And evidently, the college, when he was sitting there doing the engineering design, he says, well, I'll do that one. I says, well, when you do it, make sure you, when you get it done, you're saying, this one's for George. I had a second fellow a little ways back done the same thing. Now, this makes me feel good, only because now I know that my message is getting across. You may question the messenger, but you can't question the message. Another little fellow over on my left, he spoke up and he says, well, I'm not much into automobiles. He says, but I love trains. He says, I'll design you a train. I said, that's great. I said, I definitely can't drive a train, but I'd be more than happy to look at it. Now, I guess I've taken up enough of your time here. What I want to do, I showed you all the pieces to the carburetor last week. Now, I'm used to getting in there and quick like a bunny making a real change before I either go back on the street or go back out for my next round at the racetrack. What I want to do is I want to do a little field strip job, if you will. Being an old CB, old military man, I have some different terminology. But let me just grab this carburetor. Now, it would be fastened, I've unfastened it, it would be fastened to your intake manifold, and you'd actually be doing this hanging over the fender of the car. But what you do is, the front side of the carburetor, just come in here, And I've loosened them, but they're stuck a little bit. Nothing that a screwdriver won't fix. And we just happen to have one here. Normally they just fly right out of there. There we go. Well, I hate to tell you this, if I was between rounds, I know what it is. I'm putting pressure on the bottom of this accelerator pump. I'm going to tip it. Normally I can probably do this in about a minute and a half. I've done it so many times. But what you do is you pull out one of your studs here, put a little cup under here to catch the gasoline. You don't want that gasoline going on a hot engine. So once the gas is drained out of here, you get all your 4 screws out, pull the front bowl. Now in the front bowl, I'd indicated to you, let me just take them screws out of there. I run the neoprene floats. The brass ones you remember seeing? Well, these are neoprene and they've been cut out for the jet extenders. I run the same float front and back, but this was primarily for the back, but I like them so well I put them on the front too. This is a neoprene float. Here's that accelerator pump. When your cam, when you press on the gas pedal, this cam goes down. This is filled with fuel. It comes out this little hole and passes up through the carburetor and comes out the top here. But this front side, what I've got, this float needs to be adjusted. You see that there? Here's this big screw and nut up here on top. You would loosen this up. See how high it is? As I turn it down, it drives the float down. There's a little needle and seat in here which shuts off the fuel. Now what you're looking for, I normally set them about level. When you've got fuel in the carburetor, there's a little opening on the side here. Boy, I'm not doing too well today as far as being tough. They've been sitting here for a couple months, and that's why. There's a little, I've got one that I could see through. The fuel, you want it to just barely trickle out here as you're adjusting this top nut and screw assembly. And what I normally do is I get it just to the bottom of that hole and I bang my hip up against the fender to see if it'll just barely trickle out. Because you're going to get a little bit of difference in climate which will expand or contract your fuel. So you really don't want it flowing out of this hole here. You want to keep it just a little bit below because as the fuel expands, it'll be actually perfect. Now that's really, there's not that much to that fuel bowl. It just holds a certain amount of fuel, and you can get large ones. The one I'm after is this second one here. This guy here is what's going to make you go faster, run properly, and win races. You've got 2 things to pay attention to. Here's the jets. There's a jet here and a jet here. This is a 4-barrel carburetor, so each Venturi has got its own jet. Here's that power valve. This is spring-loaded. You see that? Vacuum will actually close this, and when you put the accelerator to the floor, you go from probably 10, 15 inches of vacuum, you'll drop down to 0 or 1, which will open up that power valve. There's 2 holes drilled inside of here which come into the main part of the carburetor and allow more fuel. This is a time device here. It allows more fuel to pass through the carburetor. So what I've done is when I showed you this carburetor last week, I had a set of 72 jets in here. I've taken the 72s out and I put the 70s back in. I indicated to you on the paperwork, I actually went, and I'm looking for the 60-foot time right here, I went a 150, 1.54 60-foot time on the 70 jets. When I put the 72s in, I went a 1.57 and a 1.59. So it's only 0.05 of a second, but that 0.05 of a second is the difference between winning and losing, running right or running wrong. So there's the first place that I want you to pay attention to. You can see it's not hard to do. Really, within a minute, you can actually, if the car's not hot, you can actually run in there and do a quick change between rounds. Or if you found that you went to the mall last night and the car was a little sluggish or you had a little hesitation in it, that power valve will give you hesitation. You want it to be able to come in, you want to tip it just enough to give you the fuel that you need to make the vehicle go. So here's a little tune-up tip for you. You're going down a highway and you're at maybe 50 miles an hour, and you just tap the gas and you get a slight hesitation. It could be one of two things. It could either be this power valve, which is inside the carburetor, or it could be your accelerator pump. Most places, the first thing they'll check will be the accelerator pump, because that's it. First initial shot of fuel you're going to get comes from here. Now, normally, your carburetor is going to have a 30cc accelerator pump. I went ahead and put a 50cc accelerator pump on mine because I do things a little bit different. But if you know that you can be different, you can play games with these things. You want to tamper with them. You want to get in there and make a change. Try the car either on a field trip or at the racetrack. See what the car does. You want to get well acquainted with this carburetor. Between the carburetor and the ignition, it's going to make you run good or run bad. But I want to at least bring to your attention that there are a couple things that you can change in here real quick. Now, it's the same on the back side of the carburetor. You've got the 4 screws, and I haven't had this one apart. You've got the 4 screws, and on the back side it looks identical. The only difference between the back metering block and the front metering block is there's adjusting screws to adjust your idle on the front, where there's none on the back. So that's how you can tell if you've got a bunch of them you're going through. Just look for the adjusting screw or blow into here, and if no air is allowed to pass through, then you know you've got a back metering block. But they look the same way. Now, let me give you a little tip. I run and these power valves open up by vacuum. The more you depress the accelerator pedal, the quicker the vacuum drops. So let's just give you an example. My particular car runs at between 10 and 11 inches of vacuum. So when I tap the gas pedal, she'll drop down to 6, 5.5, but I don't want to tip that power valve in until it gets to 5. So sometimes I have a little bit of a hesitation. There's a delay. I've actually taken the 6.5 power valve out and put a 5.0. I want to delay it just a hair longer to keep it on the lean side. I run, and that's why I think we're able to run these smaller jets. These carburetors come through with 72s. We run a 69 or a 70. Most guys go up where we're going down because I want to lean down that bottom end. When I put my cool cans on the car and I fill them full of ice, we've condensed the fuel even more. So by actually reducing the jet size, I've compensated for the increase in volume of fuel. Now, jets, power valves. You've got the accelerator pump cams that you can adjust. That's how fast or how slow that cam triggers the accelerator pump to come in. Now, I have kind of a little kit. These are things that I take to the racetrack. They're just small boxes full of gaskets and power valves and things of this nature. This fella here, I guess I never leave the house without it. I'm sure it was a fishing tackle box at one time, but I keep all my documentation in here pertaining to the springs and the jets, and I've got a complete series of jets, sometimes a couple of each because we run them in different ways, but these jets actually start in the 50s and go to the hundreds. In other words, a 50 is a real tiny hole, where a jet that is of 100, it's stamped down at 100, it's actually, and I believe it's 128 thousandths hole drilled in there. So the number does not match all the time the size of the hole. And that's something you want to remember. You put 100 jet in, it's not really 100 thousandths hole. is probably 125 or 128 thousandths. Now, I told you before, the next little trick is that spring. This is a vacuum operated secondaries, and I kind of prefer this one only because I haven't got this 800 over here perfected yet. I'm still working on it. I told you before, I always like to get a baseline going. Once I've established a baseline where I know to within a couple hundredths of a second what the 60-foot time is, the eighth mile and a quarter mile time, then I'll go back in and make a change. I've tried this carburetor back on the car a couple times after we've done some modifications to it, and it still hasn't outperformed this one here. But here's those springs. This spring right here, I had a silver spring in this carburetor. We made our run. We were running 114 miles an hour. I took the silver one out and put a purple, which is in there. The difference is how soon it'll allow the secondaries to open. With the silver spring, they weren't opening quick enough. So by putting the purple spring in, it allowed them to open up just a hair sooner. I can't tell you in milliseconds, but enough sooner where we went from 114 miles an hour to 118 miles an hour. When you can get that kind of miles an hour just by changing a spring, and that's the one where you take the, and if you'd like, I don't know if we got a good cutaway of it last week, but let me, quick like a bunny, just show you. This is a, I don't want to say adjustable, but this is one where instead of having to take it off of the carburetor, you just take the top. That top piece comes right off there. So with two screws, there's that purple spring. Yeah. So in probably a 30 seconds of time, you can take this, take the silver spring off, put the purple spring on, put it back together, and try it. Because for each vehicle that you have, I can't give you the specifics, but there's a lot that has to do with your weight of your vehicle, the chassis, how you've got the chassis set up, the tires, the length of your wheelbase, the carburetor, the ignition, the transmission, the converter. There's so many things that will affect your performance. I want to give you the basics so you're not afraid to go in there and go after that carburetor. You can see 4 screws and you take it apart. The only thing you want to do is make sure you got a couple new gaskets laying around. What I do, when I put a new gasket in the car, I put some chapstick on it. In other words, I take, that's right, the chapstick. Put a little chapstick on the front and the back side of the gasket before you put it in, and it'll keep it from sticking to the carburetor. So when you take the carburetor apart, you don't have to use a new gasket. Just put it back together and give it a little tightness, but not enough to collapse the gasket completely, and you could probably use them 3, 4, 5 times. I do. Now, let me move this out of my way here. I want to talk to you about intake manifolds. I've got 2 of them sitting on the bench here, and they've both been what I call gasket matched. Here's the gasket. This is your stock gasket, and this is an aftermarket race gasket. The difference is in the size of the openings. And once I get it measured or lined up here, I'll show you. When you're gasket matching your heads or your intake, if you look here, this gray gasket, which is stock, is about a 1/4 inch lower than the black gasket. What you've got is if I told you, oh, go ahead and gasket match your heads and your intake, and you grab this race type of gasket and you just arbitrarily went in there and opened them up to that race size, you're going to go through the intake and through the head. These are for race applications for the aftermarket heads where they put additional material on the top of the head and on the top of the intake. So you can't, when they say gasket match them, be sure of what you're doing, because yeah, I gasket match my heads and all of a sudden they're wrecked because you actually went through the top portion of the head or the top portion of the intake manifold. So that's something that if you want, and when I gasket match, I just go in there with that stock gasket or a mild race they call it, and just scribe a line, put a little a little magic marker, scribe your line in, and then just go ahead and cut to the line with your little sanders or cutters. That will be gasket matching to the gasket. You don't want to go in there and do any porting and polishing. You want to send that out to a professional to have done, because he's got a flow bench that he puts these heads and intakes on, so he knows exactly where to take the material off. This is not a guessing game. This is a very precise, and it probably costs you about $1,000 to have it done. Now, I want to move this carburetor also. I've got two intake manifolds here, and the first thing you're going to notice, this one here is much taller than this one. This has got an additional 1 inch of spacer. You can either buy this intake manifold without it attached, or you can buy it and buy a separate spacer to put on here. They come in various heights. Now what I've got, these are two different companies. I was running this guy. A couple years ago I had other problems. So my first thing was that I knew that it was up in the induction system between the carburetor, the intake, the headers, and the heads. So I went in there and I took this shorter one off, which actually goes, I think, to about 8,500 RPMs, from 45 to 8,500 RPM span. And I put this other fella on. Now, the car has run excellent. We're consistently making that 500, 512 horsepower. Now, maybe this year, I'm one that likes to go faster. I'm not sure if by putting this other intake back on, I'm going to go faster or not. But what I will do is, if I get into a good mood this summer and I feel like wasting a couple hours, I'll try it. Most of the pieces that I've showed you, we've tried. I'm giving you the formula, that recipe, if you will, to make 500 horsepower. This fellow over here does the job. This fellow may do it better, I don't know. But I'm not going to take the time to find out. The name of my game is to go faster. Now, I think I've taken up enough of your time. Next week we're going to get into ignitions. Fuel system and ignition are the most critical things that you're going to have in that car. I think at this point I'm going to say, don't forget my motto, do drags, not drugs, and I'll see you at the races.